final speaker, Janice Broadman. She's Director of the Education Development Center for Innovative Technologies. She has 20 years experience in designing, evaluating, implementing organizational development programs in the U.S. and in developing countries. She's developed 4 courses on effective use of information technology by public sector organizations at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Janice Broadman.
I'm going to use the zone. Can you all hear me? Sometimes technology makes things easier, and sometimes technology makes things harder. I'm going to talk a little bit more about information communications technologies. ICTs is the jargon. Information communication technologies and how they're being used around the world. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, so I hope that we'll have a chance to talk more if you have any questions that you'll let me know. First, I want to talk about what we mean by ICTs. We've been talking about information technology. I want to make sure we all have a good sense of what we mean by that. ICTs, information communications technologies. Then talk about what the opportunities are, some successful strategies, and I'll give you some examples, and the future challenges. So what are ICTs? What do we mean by that? Information communications technologies. Well, one thing we mean obviously is the internet. That's email, which I assume a lot of people, if not everyone, has seen, being able to send a message virtually immediately around the world. The World Wide Web, and other things that people don't use so much, things like Telnet, which lets you move large documents very quickly to other people. But there are a lot of other things in the internet besides the World Wide Web and email. We also mean things like digital radio. Now, digital radio isn't common now, but it will be. And what it means is that people will get radios. And this technology is already out there, but it's not distributed yet. People get radios, and you can program particular radio stations to particular radios. So let's say you want to send a radio program to young women. You can set that up so that it will go to particular radios of households that have young women in them. And so that's what digital radio is. Wireless. We all know about I guess a lot of people know about wireless telephone. That's where the direction we're going, because it's going to be cheaper and easier and more accessible to developing countries. PDAs, personal digital assistants. These are the little handheld computers, getting more and more powerful, easy ways to get email, easy ways to get the World Wide Web, relatively inexpensive. They're going down now to going to soon be under $100, and they're going to be ways of getting the internet to people in villages through wireless handhelds that we can't do right now. Then there are the standard applications that you all know on your computers, word processing, spreadsheets, etc., graphics programs, and then things like CD-ROMs and DVD that allow you to put a large amount of material on a very small, something that's very small, so that you can put lots of training material and video, etc., etc. And I actually brought one later. We could look at it if anybody wants to. What's coming, and that's going to make a difference? Real-time translation. That means you send an email to someone in your language, and it's immediately translated well into their language. That's around the corner. I mean, right now there is automatic translation, but it's not very good. And you can get it on a website. You can translate something, but this is going to be immediate and really good translation. Voice recognition, again, we have the technology, but it's going to be much better, so that you can literally just talk to your computer or talk to your little handheld, and you don't have to know anything more than just being able to say what you want in your own language, natural language. And then free wireless. There is a lot of talk now that as soon as we can move some of the control, the monopoly of telephone out of the state or whoever is monopolizing it, that the companies are moving towards free wireless telephone, and that probably will be available within the next few years. So what are the opportunities? We've heard a little bit about this already. One is to network globally. You can link up with people all over the world who are interested in the things that you are. Sharing experience and knowledge so that we can really see what have we learned, what did we do in South Asia, what did that mean to us, and what did we do in Mali, and what did that mean to us, and sharing that experience. Drawing on scarce knowledge. I mean, in many ways, experts, it's easy to figure out what experts think. Experts run around, they give interviews, they talk on stages, they put out articles. What's really important and valuable and scarce is the knowledge of women in villages, women on the ground, women who are changing their communities, and that's hard to get at right now, and this technology is what's going to allow us to get and identify that very valuable knowledge. Link theory to practice. It'll allow us to take theories and policies that we think are real and get feedback from people on the ground who can say, you know what, that theory doesn't fit my reality. Or that policy that was supposed to help us actually had hurt us. It'll allow us to communicate with decision makers, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. UNIFEM has been really at the cutting edge of doing some of the work of really making information technologies feed into the decision-making process, and that's one of the hardest things to do. And provide best quality. You can take something like for a CD-ROM and spend an enormous amount of time putting out absolutely the best quality, because then you can distribute that to millions and millions of people. What do we do it for? We use it, information communications technologies, to empower women. And what does that mean? In my view, which matches much of what's said, it's giving women access to knowledge and giving women recognition and compensation for their own valuable knowledge. Giving women access to economic opportunities and giving women access to political power. Lots of strategies for this that NGOs are doing around the world. They range depending on your own conditions, your own political reality, etc. But ICTs have been used to support all of these different kinds of strategies, ranging from education of women to public awareness to building NGO capacity, etc. So I want to I'm going to just give you a range of examples that I just pulled. We do run various global discussion lists, and I've pulled some examples to show you. Most of them are at NGOs, but I did want to talk about two that I think are really exciting. Nolene mentioned them. They're things that UNIFEM has done that are, as I say, I think are really on the cutting edge of what can be done, and one of the few things that large organizations, whether they're domestic or international, are doing. As Nolene mentioned, UNIFEM ran the End Violence Working Group. Now, this was using only email. What it did is it networked thousands of people around the world who wanted to end violence against women in their communities. It generated this network. And unlike most situations where if you go to a meeting, you may or may not have a chance to talk. And if I talk more, you get to talk less. Instead, in this situation, everyone got a chance to participate. Everyone got a chance to talk, or to write their message. And not only that, you wanted to encourage other people. Instead of, well, if she talks more, I'm going to have a chance to talk less. Instead, it was, if she talks more, that's more interesting, and I can talk as much as I want to, too. So that networking was really important. It fostered knowledge sharing, where organizations were talking about and sharing model legislation, model programs for training police who have to deal with women victims, model legislation, model programs for training judges. I mean, all kinds of knowledge sharing about what works, what doesn't, what are successful strategies and tools. It helped NGOs lobby for reform. A lot of NGOs found out that there were others in their area that would help them. They also got support from NGOs around the world for the reforms they wanted. It built morale. A lot of women wrote in and said, you know, I felt so alone I felt our group has been trying to fight violence against women. We feel like sometimes we're the only people out there. And this let us see that this is a worldwide movement, that there are thousands of people around the world who want to end violence against women also. And we felt it really made us want to fight for this cause. It generated public support. A lot of people said, we didn't realize how incredibly strong this movement is, and we didn't also realize how incredibly important the problem is. It built a knowledge resource that is available on the web, and it put input into policy making. That's one of the hardest things. And the UNIFEM actually used this discussion list and some others to put women's views into the policy making arena. And the other that I'll just mention is this video conference that linked up 5 countries and the UN General Assembly that had never been done before, for women to come together through electronics and speak. Really, it was like live video about what's going on in my country, what's working, what isn't working, how does that change. It built morale, and it also fostered activism where people said, we see how important this problem is and we're going to change it. I think we went to it just out. Well, Rafi's fixing that. One of the things that's happened is that NGOs around the world have started to use information communications technologies to push their programs in their own countries. And this has happened in countries that you wouldn't expect, countries that have very low levels of technology. Some of those countries are in countries with Muslim countries with a large Muslim population. Some of those countries have minority Muslim populations, but are trying to serve women within those countries. Senegal, for example, is one country where 2 NGOs, Women Living Under Muslim Laws Network and Enda Senfe, have done a lot of things, but one of the things they did is they had a campaign using email to protect a filmmaker who had done a film on female genital mutilation. And she was being attacked by a number of religious groups, and they used email to protect this filmmaker and let people know what was going on. And they also used it to build solidarity within Senegal for the women's rights movement. Another example is it was in England. They took a ban. The women in the Muslim community couldn't go out in public and feel comfortable going to a telecenter, public telecenter. So they brought the telecenter to the women. They put computers in a van, they went to the communities, and they set it up in women's homes so that women could get together, use the technology, and get information. Another example is Finland. Femina Borealis, they used both the web and email to distribute information to crisis centers. What's going on? How can we handle these kinds of challenges, though legislative or public, in terms of public awareness? They expanded public awareness about the challenge of violence against women. They set up a database of information and legislation, etc., for NGOs in Finland. And they trained women to use ICTs to mobilize for democracy. Another interesting example was in the Department of Health of the Philippines. They developed, and we actually worked with them, they went from knowing, they had never seen a CD-ROM. They went from that to actually developing professional training CD-ROMs for healthcare providers. They did some, for example, for midwives and also for doctors on how to do counseling in family planning. And they also used it for public awareness campaigns. In South India, there's an NGO that's using ICTs to help women in South India to market their goods through the internet and to make links with suppliers and with buyers. Another example is in Africa. In Indonesia, especially during the move to remove Suharto, the Indonesian Women's Coalition for Justice and Democracy, they established what they called local hotspots. These were NGOs that had email and had internet. They got the information and then they spread it to all the NGOs in their area who didn't have access to internet and email. And through that, they coordinated their action and they established common positions to put women's rights on the agenda for the New Democracy movement. Women's Net in Africa, they went ahead to make women in government more accessible to women in the local areas. So where are the challenges for the future? You can see that things are happening. And there's a lot going on in a lot of countries. There are a lot of interesting technologies. What's going to make the change is partly the technology, but mostly how we use it. You know, setting up an internet list is very easy, but making it a powerful global community is difficult. And that's where you have to really put in energy and thought about how you're going to use the technology. So where I see the future challenges are using information technology to get access to political decision-making circles. We can say, we can discuss, we can interact, we can network, but if we don't use this to get into the decision-making circles, it won't make a change. We have to be able to provide economic opportunities. It's not enough just to put something on a website. You really have to understand the markets, understand globalization, understand the financing, and put that all together. And finally, to acknowledge and compensate women's knowledge. As was mentioned, women have a lot of knowledge that's just, I think Nolene said this, is just taken and it's given for free, but we also have to acknowledge and compensate women for the knowledge that they have.